my name is Nathaniel. I am in the 8th grade at Apple Valley Middle School. Today's Youth Sunday theme is There's Grace for That. Our high school mission trip team has prepared this morning's sermon meditation in which they will discuss our theme and share reflections from their prayer journals and year-long Bible study. Think, Believe, Do. Our 2019 gym seniors also wrote sermonettes to share their experience of grace during their time in youth ministry with you this morning.
Hello, I'm Nelson Wiggins, and I'm a sophomore at Hendersonville High School. This year in high school youth group, we used a Bible study called TBD, which stands for Think, Believe, Do. During each Bible study session, we would focus on a specific question about prayer. Using the TBD journals, videos, and scripture, we would work through our questions about prayer together. Our first question was, is prayer important? Together, we discussed why prayer is important and what it means to us. I personally feel that prayer is important because it helps us develop a relationship with God. Our next topic was, is there a right way to pray? We know there are different ways to pray. For example, praying silently or praying out loud. Is one better or more effective than the other? Is it wrong to pray with your eyes open? After looking at this together, I think that there isn't a wrong way to pray. Praying is a conversation with God and you should pray with God how you feel comfortable and how you connect best. The next session, we focused on the question, does prayer change things? If prayer didn't change things, why would we do it? After studying this question, I realized that God does answer our prayers. Prayer does change things. God might not answer our prayers in the exact way we were thinking, but God answers it the way we need it. Our last question was, does prayer change God? Personally, this one was really hard. We usually think of God as unchanging, but if we as humans change, does God change to help us get through our new problems? I still don't really know how I feel about this question, but one point I took from this was that God is always involved in our lives. Even if God changes, God will be there to help. Throughout this whole Bible study, I realized how important prayer was and that you don't have to pray a certain way for God to listen. God is always there to listen, and God gives us grace no matter what we are going through.
Hi, my name is Elise Trexler, and I'm a junior at West Henderson High School. During our high school Bible study time, we wrote an individual TBD, Think, Believe, Do, prayer journals throughout our meetings about the things we were learning and talking about with prayer. At the end of our time, we brainstormed together and came up with some big ideas that summed up the lesson and big actions we could do to continue the lesson and prayer into our daily lives. For our first meeting, our big idea we came up with was that prayer is a practice of faith and a connection to God. Our first big action was to make an effort to pray for our enemies or people we usually wouldn't pray for. After the second meeting, our big idea was that good prayer is an open, comfortable conversation with God. The challenge for the next month was to try different ways to pray, like singing or praying in groups. The third big idea was that prayer is faith in action, and our big action was to focus on praying for the things we are thankful for instead of just things we wanted help with. For our fourth Bible study, the big idea we came up with was that prayer is a way to communicate with God who listens, and the big action was to pray for positive change in the world. What stood out for me most was the first big action, praying for people we usually wouldn't pray for. Sometimes it's hard to remember to love the people who annoy you, but praying for them helped me to remember to love them, and it made our interactions easier.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sebastian, and I'm an 8th grader that will be attending the gym mission trip to Osage Nation in Oklahoma this summer. One of the team commitments before we leave for our annual mission trip is participation in an overnight retreat at the church together. During the overnight, we bond as a team, play games, and learn about God. At this year's overnight, we had interactive prayer stations to experience time in prayer with God. For example, the seed prayer station involved planting a seed in a cup and praying for what you wanted to grow in the world. I chose healthy lifestyles, so you can enjoy life more. Another prayer station was Scrabble tile letters. I connect the word dogs to pray for because they help us as pets and love us. There are also so many homeless dogs that need a home. My favorite prayer station was a candles prayer station. At this station, we lit a candle and prayed for someone for healing.
Hi, my name is Garrett Sosha, and I'm in 9th grade at the Henderson County Early College. Prayer shows me there is grace by giving a way to connect to God. This is important to me because praying gives us a way to tell God our thoughts and feelings in a way that is personal and does not need to be formal. I have seen God's grace in prayer personally a few times. Prayer connects God's family by providing a way for people to support others. I have experienced this connection to grace when I broke my leg the first, second, and third time, and also when I had my chest surgery. It was very reassuring and comforting to know that the congregation was praying for healing and supporting me. Even though praying is something that doesn't have to take long, it was very impactful and meaningful to me.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Wingard, and I'm a freshman at Hendersonville High School. This morning, I would like to share with you where we found this year's Youth Sunday theme, There's Grace for That. This theme came from the 2018 ELCA Youth Gathering that occurred last summer in Houston, Texas, in which myself and 27 other youth and adult guides attended. The ELCA Youth Gathering occurs every 3 years and is when high school Lutheran youth gather from all over the USA in one place. While attending the ELCA Youth Gathering, youth and adult guides had the opportunity to serve, spend time with their state synod, and enjoy the interactive learning area. Then, at the end of each day, all the youth and adult guides gathered in the Houston Texans Stadium for speakers, worship, and singing. Some of the various sermons our group was able to hear were from Pastor Nadia Bowles-Weber, author Marlon Hall, poet and musician Joe Davis, and so many more inspiring speakers. My personal favorite speaker was Marlon Hall because he discussed the way God loves us. He told us that love wasn't earned, but rather love is welcomed. During his sermon, he welcomed his daughter onto the stage and told us about how her coming into the world after many years of wanting a child made Marlon realize love was something that was given to all and didn't have to be worked for. Over the course of each evening, the speakers covered different aspects that related to the ELCA Youth Gathering theme of This Changes Everything. But one speaker in particular, and his words, "There's grace for that," stood out to our group. Here is Abigail to share more about William Starkweather and his quote that inspires us. There's grace for that.
Hi, I'm Abigail Welch. I'm in the 9th grade at Hendersonville High School. Our theme, There's Grace for That, comes from the words of Pastor William Starkweather's sermon at the ELCA Youth Gathering this past summer. Pastor Starkweather shared in his sermon with us that as a teenager, he struggled with his faith in God and did not feel like he knew God. He felt alone, was experiencing self-harm, because at the age of 13, Starkweather became a cutter. He described how he used this as a coping mechanism for his stress and anxiety, and how it was hard for him to get help. He decided to seek help by going to church. When he went to church, he didn't really understand and didn't feel accepted in the community. After joining the praise band, he still didn't feel comfortable. As a young person, Starkweather decided to talk to the pastor at the church. He shared with the pastor about his struggle with self-harm and how uncomfortable he was being at the church. When Starkweather was done sharing, the pastor said a 4-letter quote that would stick with him forever. "You're going to hell." These pastor's words made Starkweather scared and alone, without hope, and like he was in a world without God. Fast forward a couple years later, and some of William Starkweather's friends invited him to attend a new church with them. Starkweather felt uncomfortable at the church, yet he still went. After attending for a while, he found himself telling the pastor at the new church about his past. He again shared how he felt alone in his faith and how he had been experiencing self-harm since the age 13. This time, when Starkweather was done sharing, the pastor said a 4-letter quote that would stick with him forever. "There's grace for that." Now, for every moment after hearing those healing words, William Starkweather felt a part of a much bigger and a much more loving community than he ever thought was ever possible. As William Starkweather moved forward in his life, he has not inflicted self-harm in 7 years, and he found a call within the ELCA to be a pastor. He said that there is so much more in life and unconditional love that grace does for us. We don't have to earn this love. We just receive it by being ourselves and who we are. William wanted to share this message of God's love and grace with us. So if we ever feel alone or unwanted, we know that God will be there for us and loves us unconditionally.
My name is James, and I'm a 9th grader at Hendersonville High School. Today's theme verse is 1 Corinthians 15:10, which is printed on page 6 of your bulletin. But by the grace of God I am what I am, and his grace towards me has not been in vain. On the contrary, I have worked harder than any of them, though it was not I, but the grace of God that is with me. To me, this verse is saying, no matter what you've done, where you've been, or what you're going to do, the grace of God will always be with you. Personally, I've messed up a lot and experienced unreliable people. But one of the many things that's been there and reliable is our God's grace. I don't use it as an excuse for my actions, but I use it as a tool to guide me through my life. This verse makes me comfortable enough that if I want to venture out and try something new, I know I'll always be loved and always be in God's grace no matter what.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jake Patterson, and I'm in the 10th grade at Hendersonville High School. Today I will be discussing how our theme this year, There's Grace for That, relates to our gospel for the day, Luke 15, or the parable of the prodigal son, which is printed on page 7 of your bulletins. One of the methods Jesus used in teaching was through parables. A parable is an earthly story with a godly meaning. Other examples of parables Jesus told include the parable of the mustard seed and the parable of the lost sheep. One way that grace is shown in our gospel text this morning is through the farmer at the beginning of the parable, giving this destitute son a job after the son had blown through the inheritance his father gave him. Although the job isn't much, it allows the son to contemplate his actions and come to a conclusion that he had spent his inheritance incorrectly, and that he needs to ask for forgiveness from the father. I would like to direct you to verse 17 of chapter 15 to reiterate what the son realizes while working for the farmer. It reads, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.'" Once the son decides to go back home seeking forgiveness, he isn't sure how he will be received. The son could be afraid that the father had decided that he had already given his son a chance and that his son had blown through it. His father could have sent him away angry that the son would even have the audacity to show up after what he had done. The son also could have been given a cold shoulder by the father. Instead, there's good news in this parable. The father decides to give the son grace and shows forgiveness for the son's actions. This is shown in the passage with the father running down to meet his son before he even arrives home, and the joy and love that they show each other through their embrace and the feast that ensued. Verse 23 demonstrates that point, saying, "But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him." This parable helps me in my understanding of grace by showing an example of how God gives us grace. The father's quote in verse 32 really brings it all together. as he states, "But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because the brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found." This parable helps to teach me that even if we are wrong or fall on hard times, God will always love us and keep us in God's grace.
My name is Brandon Buman. I'm a senior at East Henderson High. Since 6th grade, I've been involved with the youth group here at Grace Lutheran. This morning, I'd like to share with you another aspect of my life, my faith. I'm also an Eagle Scout. Being an Eagle Scout and this church has shaped my faith in ways I never thought possible. The road to becoming an Eagle was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I've traveled to other states, and I've helped other people do things. I've done some things people never get the chance to do, but becoming an Eagle is the thing I'm most proud of. It has shown me that there's more than faith than just within the walls of the church. There's more to the world than just us. I've gone on trips with my scout troop that has showed me the true beauty of what God gave us. For example, miles of clear blue sky with mountains in the distance. These trips with my troop showed me who God is and strengthened my faith. Not only have these trips with my troop shaped who I am, but also singing in the church choir. I've been singing in the church choir for about 2 years now. It has shown me that there is beauty in music. Sharing this with other people and singing with the church is just a life-changing experience. All of these experiences have not only shaped who I am, but it's also shaped my faith.
Hello, I'm Walter, Laura's younger brother. Oop, that was loud.
That was me. We're having some technical difficulties getting the USB on here, so keep going. Sorry, Walter.
Laura was an early high school graduate this January, and I'm sure she would be happy to be here, but she's currently about 4,500 miles away in Germany, so that would be a little difficult. She did, however, put a senior sermonette video together, which will be displayed there if Anne gets it to work.
Hi, my name's Laura Wingard and I'm a senior from East Henderson High School. One of the hardest things that I've ever done is tell my parents that I didn't want to be confirmed. I come from a really religious family. There are multiple pastors in my family. My grandmother sat on the board for the women of the ELCA, and my mother works here, so that was fun. It may seem like I'm genetically predisposed to be a Christian and to be a very religious person, but it just didn't click for me, you know? I couldn't see myself that way, and I didn't really believe in a God. So that was very stressful being 14 years old. After all, my parents always taught me that it was important to be honest. So I didn't want to lie and say I was something that I wasn't just to please them, but at the same time I didn't want to be a disappointment. So I remember sitting down with Eamon and basically telling him, hey, I don't fit. What do I do? And he told me essentially that there isn't one way to be a good person. That the church stands more as a moral code for some than just as a, you have to be this religious to come in. And that changed a lot for me. It reminded me that there's more than one way to be a good person, and that there's grace allowing us to be good in different ways.
My name is Shadiah Costa Oviedo. I am 17 years old, and I am an early grad that is currently attending Academy of Art University. I have attended Grace Lutheran Church since I was 6 years old, and sometimes people will share that the church they attend is their second family. This is not true for me. The church is simply my family. Grace Lutheran Church has always supported me and pushed me to be a better person. This February, I volunteered to be a small group leader at LYO, which stands for Lutheran Youth Organization. LYO is an annual retreat where Lutheran youth gather from all over North Carolina in one place for the weekend. At first, serving as a small group leader, it seemed like something I wouldn't really want to do, but I'm really glad that I participated. I led my small group with another leader named Alex. We got along as soon as we met because the both of us sort of didn't know what we were doing. I met 70 people that had stories about their faith journey, some being heartwarming and others that were heartbreaking. It was pretty cool that they had the confidence to open up to Alex and I and ask for our advice. LYO was my favorite gathering to attend, and I hope that LYO has an impact on the up-and-coming high school youth as it has on me. Mr. Burton, Ann, and my grandfather, Pastor Oviedo, are three people that are close examples to me about there's grace for that. My grandfather has taught and modeled for me that there's grace for that by still continuing his education. This shows me that education has no limits and that you just have to have faith in yourself. Thank you, Grace Lutheran Church, for teaching me to believe in myself.